office. Today we have our guest speakers, Barbara Giammanco and Kent Gregoire. Just want to give you a quick overview of these webinars and how to communicate with us in case you have any questions. There's a chat box inside, I believe it's the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A and a chat, so if there's anything that you want to communicate with us on, feel free to type it into there. Be sure to stop by the new Social Selling University website. We have a lot of new content, and it's coming out daily, so there's lots of great stuff in here for you to learn from, good educational points, and a lot of the content is contributed by the speakers we have today. One of the things we like to do on these webinars, besides chat back and forth within the chat box, is take live calls. So if you are interested in having a conversation with us, asking questions about the content that you've heard, feel free to raise your hand. You'll be able to see that in the left side of the panel. It'll look like a little hand. For those of you that are on the webinar, feel free to raise your hand now, and let's just make sure everybody's paying attention and that they know how to do this. Look at that. Everybody's raising hands. Outstanding. All right, I'm going to lower everybody's hands now just so you know where that button is. So if you have a question that you want to ask about the content that we're going through, feel free to raise your hand, and at a natural break in the presentation, I will call on you, and then we'll unmute your line and we can have a conversation. All right? So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Barbara. One moment. Let's see. Okay. Barbara, are you there?
I'm here, Coca, and thanks for having us. I'm getting my screen sharing set up, and if all has gone according to plan, everybody can see the presentation.
Looks great to us.
Okay, fabulous. Well, as always, thanks for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to team up with Inside View and the Social Selling University for another great webinar. I'm really excited to have everybody joining us today. So we are going to talk about some things that we believe that sales executives really need to be thinking about and really take to heart and embrace with respect to social selling. And so that's really going to be the focus for today. We do encourage the questions, and so we love it as people raise their hand and contribute to the conversation. So we're looking forward to that as well. So I'm Barb Giammanco, and my partner, business partner Kent Gregoire, is also on the line. Kent, you are there, yes? Okay, well, in just a minute, he'll chime in. So what I want you to know about me is I am the president of the company, Social Centered Selling, and we focus on helping organizations really leverage social media in a way that drives pipeline and sales results. I'm also the co-author of a book called The New Handshake, Sales Meets Social Media. Very passionate about how specifically you can use tools like LinkedIn, Twitter, blogging, Inside View, and others to really achieve those sales goals and results. So Kent, are you with me now? Are you able to chime in and introduce yourself?
Might be having some problems with Kent's audio, but we'll get this thing, we'll get it fixed on our side, and you can just go right ahead, Barb.
Yeah, that's great. So Kent is my business partner, and he has been working with senior level leaders in sales and as owners of companies for a large number of years. And Kent has also helped to start and sell many, many, many companies. So he's very well versed in how you do what needs to happen in order to take your business to market, and really thrilled to be able to team up with him on this partnership that we call Social Selling. So if you are tweeting, and I hope you are, I'm at Barbara Giammanco, as Kent is at Kent Gregoire, and also we're using the hashtag #SocialSellExcel. Now, Coca, what's the Inside View hashtag we want them to use? Is it just #SocialSelling?
Social social sell, social selling. Those are all great hashtags that we all follow. For this series of webinars, we usually use social selling.
All right, perfect. So we always like to kick off, and some of the things, some of you have been following us from webinar to webinar, and we really appreciate that. And so there are going to be a couple things that are a refresher, but we really also took the time to think about things in a little different way. In other words, we're going to talk about some things that we know, some specific examples of things that we know work well, and other things that don't work well. We've also got some metrics and numbers we want to share with you, but the real thing that you need to get your head around is that social media and the way buyer behavior has changed means that we as sales professionals need to approach the process differently ourselves. And so as my colleague and friend Eric Qualman would say, it isn't about whether or not we do social media. It's really important that we do it well, and so that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. Funny story, Coke, I even answered a question this morning on Focus.com where people were, the question was, well, when is, social media going to be considered a serious business tool? And what's interesting about the question is, I think the tools are already being considered serious. I think it's really in the application that makes the core difference, and so we're going to talk about some of those sorts of things. So today we really wanted to just reinforce, if you will, that sales is evolving. And the buyers in particular are looking at the process in a completely different way, and so it's very, very important that we as sales professionals along with that. We want to talk about your role as an executive in social selling, because your role as the executive will play a huge part in whether or not you find success. And then we'll talk about the 5 steps of really implementing a social business strategy that helps you increase your sales and loyalty. And of course, we want to give you some success stories, but we also want to contrast with some things that are not really that effective and are equally responsible for impacting the brand perception of your company. And so we think it's very important for you as an executive to be keeping that in mind. Some folks say it's in the neighborhood of 70%. Some think it's a little bit higher, but regardless, the point is that buyers are completing a very large portion of the sales cycle, the buying cycle, before they interact with salespeople. For that very reason alone, you need to not only be active, but you've got to be visible and have compelling presence. If someone is looking for the product or service that you have to sell, and they land on your LinkedIn page, and as I see with so many pages, they're largely blank, or it has the title of what you do and the name of your company. Well, that's all well and good, but that's not really telling your prospect what type of result they can expect in terms of working with you. And so you really want to think about how you stand out from your competitors. It could be through blogging, it could be through the content you share, it could be the white papers you host on your LinkedIn profile as an example. But you need to be visible, because buyers have a lot of choices, and they're going to be highly likely to move on to the next choice in their list if when they land on your page you're not really compelling. So they leverage the social web and they do a lot of homework, and unfortunately that's just the way the world works. There's also a level of impatience, and they're looking for immediate value. So your ability to share white papers or case studies, I mean, if you think about this Social Selling University, they're doing a fabulous job. Coke and his team are doing a great job. They have webinars. Those of us who participate in the webinars and our presenters, our blog posts are being posted. So there's a lot of content and white papers and things that are being shared that make it easy for people to get more information to help them become more informed and make that decision. You want to think about how you can do that. So within the confines of corporate policies and such, and make sure your material is vetted and approved and all that sort of thing, but hosting presentations or video or white papers, these are the kinds of pieces of information that you want to share up front to give that prospect something to really consider when they're thinking about you.
Great, Barbara. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes indeed. So we are rocking and rolling, and I will have you jump in just a moment. Glad you were able to get on board with this, Kent.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So what does social selling really require? Well, the bare bones minimum is you've got to have that sharp business acumen, as you're gonna find out in just a minute. It's really about understanding the customer's business, and you've got to have a level of social media savvy. If you think it's just for kids, you're really mistaken. In addition, always great sales skills and great people skills. And as you're going to find in some of the examples that we're going to talk about, though, is some people are choosing to use approaches that really are working against them and not for them. And so we want to help your sales organization be ready and be utilizing the approach in a way that really makes sense. So I want to share a success story. You know, people are always asking about numbers, and I have something special I'm going to share with you at the very end. But I want to share a couple of success stories throughout the presentation today. One, it comes from my friend and colleague, Rini over at Pakra Games. And they are a gamification company, and they can track 95% of their pipeline and 30% of their revenue back to social outreach, specifically through LinkedIn and tweets over Twitter. So here's what they do. They send invitations to connect with people via LinkedIn. And what I love is they've got a great process here that they follow consistently. So they send those invitations to connect. Within 24 hours, they then follow up over Twitter, over email, or perhaps by phone. Approximately 17 out of 20 people will accept that invite within 36 hours. That then prompts them to send a short personalized message from the sales representative who includes the link back to the Pakra web. And Rini tells me that 50% of the folks in that group are then responding, which then leads to a sales conversation. Right? So here's one example of an organization who specifically is able to track the effort that they're putting into using social outreach to get the sales result that they're looking for. Now, what I really want to stress here, though, is that they've thought through a process and then they have a tracking mechanism, and that's what really makes this work for them.
With Pakra, you know, going back to that really quick, Rini was part of a webinar with us maybe 6 months ago, along with Annika Seeley, and you know, this is the first time I've seen it actually laid out on a slide of what they do. But you know, this is a case in point of how a company is managing, you know, driving leads and really creating opportunities around social outreach. And you know, after that initial webinar, when it was talked about, you know, like I said, this is the first time we've seen it in a bullet format. But this is a format that I think that every salesperson and every sales executive should get on board with, because we're seeing it more and more that sales and marketing are trying to get that alignment, that they're trying to find ways to kind of overlap each other and finding ways to reach out to these individuals that will then, you know, you reach out to them in a social aspect, and then you reach out to them on a phone or an email. You know, you have to have these different mediums that you're connecting with people on. You know, is that right?
It's absolutely right. And what Rini told me is that, you know, just thinking through a process that they're using consistently is really how it's creating success for them. And, you know, Coca, you know that Kent and I really hammer on this. It's about the consistency and how you are implementing a process for making this work. You know, if you're just flitting around sharing content, you're over here and you're over there, and you don't really have a process that you're kind of following that's sort of a laid out sort of order, if you will, then you are going to have difficulty, I think, achieving the results that you're looking for. And so I was pretty impressed. And if you look at this, the one thing that really jumped out at me, this is not complicated, right? This is not complicated. No, yeah, go ahead, Coca.
No, I was just agreeing with you. I mean, like I said, I'm amazed to see this, you know, this process laid out so simply, because I mean, anybody can do this.
Well, that's right. And, you know, in the course of the last, and people after a lot of the sessions, you know, they'll send notes to Kent and I, and they'll say, this is really great, and, you know, how do you do this, and how do you, and really, I think sometimes people get it in their mind that it's overly complicated, and it's really not. And you can see, this is quite simple. Who can't do this? You can send invitations to connect. You can already be ready to go to follow up and, you know, find them on Twitter, send them an email, call them on the phone, whatever it might be, reach back out to them over LinkedIn email, you know, track how many people accept the invitation, and then be ready immediately to connect with them. And my little tip, if you will, whenever someone invites me to connect, Coca, and you know this and a lot of others do as well, whenever someone invites me to connect, I immediately, when I decide to accept, I then click on the Send a Message button. That allows me to very quickly personalize a message and say thank you. What I love about what Rini and her team are doing, and I haven't really thought about it, but it makes total sense, I could always be including a link back that says, if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing, here's a link to the website, and of course would love to learn more about your business. Then pay attention, right, to who responds to you at that point, and now you have the opportunity to ask to have a phone call. Anybody could put this into practical application, in my opinion. So a couple reasons why social attempts fail. Well, even in the case of answering this Focus.com question this morning, was quite interesting that, some of the reasons why organizations are failing or individuals are failing is because they jump on Twitter as an example, and they're not really thinking about what they want to accomplish, or they just don't think about a plan, or they don't think their strategy through. I'm not going to share the name of this company, but I just want to share with you that we've become aware of a company who, well-intended, decided that their sales force, which is quite large, I don't know, 700-800 reps who have 400 or 500 accounts apiece, they decided that they'd leverage social media in this particular way. They decided that they would have all reps monitor, or attempt to monitor, all of their accounts on Twitter. If you can imagine, that was disastrous, because even the most experienced with the most sophisticated software would have a very difficult time trying to monitor the conversations going on between 500, 600, 700 accounts that you're trying to do business with. Well, the project unfortunately failed, and therein the proclamation came that social media doesn't work. But it does work. A few things went wrong in that scenario. Number one, why monitor all of the accounts? Why not determine who are the top accounts and the top opportunities to follow? Monitor a small group, really create a process. Expecting sales reps to sit on Twitter monitoring conversations all day long, that's just not going to happen. And so it isn't that the technology fails us. We fail when we don't make sure that we have a well thought out plan, and then we choose the right kind of tool to support what we're trying to do.
Yeah, so in that example, Barb, when a company, and I've actually heard of companies wanting to do that, is monitor all the customer conversations. And I mean, that's a great in theory, but like you said, it just doesn't scale. As a salesperson, as a sales executive, when you're talking to your sales team and saying, we're going to start leveraging Twitter as a sales team, what would you suggest they do? Maybe their top 5 accounts, maybe pick 1 or 2, or how would you suggest that?
I honestly wouldn't go with more than 5, especially if they're new at this, right? I mean, so first of all, do you have a process? Okay, you're going to monitor the 5 accounts. What are you actually looking for? What's going to prompt the phone call or the LinkedIn invitation or whatever it might be? So similar to what we showed with Popcorn Games and how they had laid out these steps, I think you want to take that same approach. But personally, I would have said, okay, look at your top 25 and then start with 5 to monitor and see how that works, and then start to measure how well you're doing. Have you thought through the keywords and the triggers that you're actually looking for? Frankly, I probably would use Twitter so you could monitor some conversations, but I'd also be telling the executive, and I'm always going to give a plug for Inside View because we use the tool religiously, and then I'm going to say, and why don't you take those 5, go on over to LinkedIn, or excuse me, Inside View, and start doing a little more detailed homework. Are there executives that you're trying to get to that you really ought to be following on Twitter? So I'd approach it that way. But asking someone to try and monitor 500 accounts is just ludicrous. So good intention, I'm sure.
It's insane.
Right? Good intention, but now the company thinks that the technology failed them. And it wasn't the technology that failed. It was the strategy or lack thereof.
We have a question that came through. Zach, one of the attendees, said, everything else I've heard in his career is not to send invitations to connect with people on LinkedIn that you don't really know. I have my own opinions. I want to kind of hear yours. I know this has come up in other webinars, but how do you approach that? I mean, if you don't specifically know these people, what are you should we be reaching out to them? And if so, what type of content? Which is a follow-up question that somebody else has asked. What type of intro, or what should you say to these people that you don't really know when you're trying to connect with them on a social network?
Cool. Well, I've got an example of someone who I feel did it wrong and then did it right, and I'll talk about that in a second. So here's the official LinkedIn policy is you connect with people you know. And, the truth is, you may not know everyone you make a decision to connect with. I meet a lot of people in groups. I know Kent does too. People hear us on the webinar. We always get a lot of people who want to connect with us after a webinar. And frankly, I don't know you yet personally, but if you've taken the time to listen to the webinar and you've taken a moment to personalize your message a little bit, and it says, hey, Barb, I checked out your profile. I see what you do. Hey, we may have some complimentary services. Really appreciate what you shared with us. I'm going to be pretty inclined to say yes. Now, if it's a prospect and somebody that I want to get in front of, I'll just be perfectly honest, and I want Kent to chime in here too. I don't take the same approach that Pakra does, where they're probably reaching out to some folks they don't know yet. Me, I personally am going to look for a way to get a personal introduction. So if I'm trying to get in front of you, Coca, as an executive, I'm going to look for the people that we have in common. And I might do one of two things. I might either call them and get more information and have them help make that introduction, or I might say, do you think it's okay if I go ahead and reach out to Coca directly? And they would probably say, sure, use my name. And then I'd craft something that said, was having a conversation with so-and-so. Coca, here's some of the reasons why I think might be worth an opportunity to talk for a couple of minutes. And that's sort of how I approach it. Kent, how do you approach it?
Well, I do the same thing, and one of the things I started doing more recently is, I really think about, what is it that I can be doing for this person? So, I really try to find out, not just from a sales point of view, but if somebody's looking to connect with me or if I'm looking to connect with them, what might I be able to do for them that's beyond the ultimate mission of potentially generating business? Some examples of that would be potentially finding people that are even within my network that I can make connections for them. But one of the things I've always done, and this goes back well before we had the advantage of using social media, is reach out to people that are in my network who know those individuals with whom I want an introduction to. I find that's probably the most powerful thing we can do, and certainly I know our research backs that up.
Right, and then let's talk about inside view. I mean, when we're working with customers, we are saying, okay, if this is a target account you're trying to reach, and this is the executive or a couple of executives you're trying to get in front of, what can you learn about them? Have they won any awards? What new initiative is on the table? I think of a recent opportunity I had to speak at the Cisco Partner Summit, and the executive who invited me in to do that, well, naturally I went and checked her out on Inside View, and lo and behold, I find a nice video where she had rolled out the strategies for how they are trying to do more to support their partners, and that led that demonstrated to her when I got a chance to meet her personally, and I said, gosh, I learned about the strategies you're focused on. You could take that information, let's say you hadn't connected with this person yet, but you've learned about a rollout for a new initiative. You could certainly use that as an entree point. So, Coca, now it's your turn. What do you do?
When I'm reaching out to people on any social network, I mean, obviously, I use Inside View as a tool to find some type of relevance if we're not already, in some type of connection, be it one of these webinars or some other direct connection. But I'll find something interesting that's going on with them. I mean, the great thing about social media and the internet as a whole is that most people are putting their lives in some fashion online. And they're putting it online to share it with their friends or family or just the world at large. So, if they're sharing that information, it's great to be able to pull that into context in regards to your conversation. So kind of what you're pointing out, is it, an award they've won? Maybe it's something great that is happening with their business. We've won deals, here based on going into a prospect that we initially had no conversation with and saying, hey, saw that you just got a new round of funding, or hey, saw that you just won this award, and they always perk their ears up and say, wait, how do you know this stuff? It's because salespeople, business people, the buyers, they want to know that they're being listened to. They want to know that somebody's actually paying attention to them, and that you're going to come to them with some relevant information. And if you're paying attention to what's happening in the industry and what's happening with them personally or at a corporate level, that's always a great inroad. If you can leverage connections, that's even better. Because research shows that if you can leverage a connection to get into a new prospect, that there's a much higher likelihood. I think it's like 84% of the time that you leverage a connection, you're able to get in the door because people are going to listen from their peer group.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. Well, and you know what? I want to remind people too that, and you just said it, Coca, it's the personal things. So look for the personal things that you have commonality around. And on the LinkedIn profile, it could be, maybe it's a charity they're involved in, or kids soccer, whatever it might be. But I'm always looking for those personal things as well, because those, I think, people really tend to connect with you when they say, okay, we belong to the same church, or we're fighting for the same nonprofit cause. It's so when you're thinking about your message, really the most important thing to do when you're looking to reach out to someone that you don't know yet, find out the things that are important to the other person, and no matter what, please, I'm begging you, resist the urge to pitch them on your products and services. You want to make that initial connection one that doesn't feel like you're actually being spammed by somebody, because this actually comes from some information from Inside View that 90%, 92% of your prospects never or almost never take a meeting from a cold call. And by the way, that goes for cold email too. And so we thought it would be fun to show you, I'm going to show you one or two things, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kent for some. He's going to take some of the conversation forward for us. But let's talk about some brand killers. One of the things we want sales executives to know is that if your people are using social tools or technology in general to simply throw boilerplate spam out there, you're probably going to get a reaction, and it's not going to be the reaction that you want. This is an email that came to me. I take the name of the company out, but this email came to me, and I just want to point out a couple of things that I had a real problem with. First, you read it, and it seems like it's nice enough. But when you look a little closer, there's some things that I want you to understand that really rubbed me wrong as the person, right? I'm the buyer on the receiving end of this. First of all, he says he's tried to reach me several times, which was a complete lie. This was the first time I ever got a message. Then it goes on to tell me the reasons why he thinks I ought to talk to him is because other big companies are using his solution. Guess what? Doesn't really matter to me because you haven't told me what's in it for me. Then he goes on to say, I'm looking forward to speaking to you, but don't want to waste your time. Really? This email is a waste of my time. He goes on to ask me to then answer these questions, because if I do that, my response is going to help me save time and effort. Now, I know that this is a tactic that somebody taught this person. And they may be thinking, maybe they've got a lot of reps in the company who are using this approach, and they may be thinking that this approach is really getting them some traction. But I'm going to tell you, I used it as a blog post, and we got a lot of comments from people who just said this kind of thing rubs them the wrong way. So let me contrast that with one of my blog commenters said, well, Barb, how would you have done it? Okay, so this was just quick, top of mind. All of you very sharp folks, I bet you could come up with an even better way to approach it. But here's what I said. If this individual had come to me and said, I've spent time in your blog and your LinkedIn profile, watched your tweets. I notice you've built up a name in this space. I see you're an advocate for video. Well, you probably already know this, but video is proven to capture awareness from prospects roughly X times more than simply text on a page. That's led, right, to an increase in sales revenue for a majority of our clients. That kind of thing now my ears are perked up. I'm like, oh, okay, knows a little bit about me. He's telling me that his other clients are getting a certain percentage increase, a lift in the sales revenue as a result of using video. He goes on to say, I see you do a lot of speaking, so you know our video platform might be a good solution. But here's what I would suggest to everyone. You know, in this scenario, then the person ends with, I'm not sure if the solution's a fit, but if you're willing to chat for 15 minutes, we could talk about whether or not there's potential to work together. Now, I don't know about Coca or Kent or any of you listening and watching. I would take this person's call. Now, I'm not a big fan of getting email out of the blue from people that I don't know. That being said, if the message had come to me in this way and the person had demonstrated they've done a little due diligence, I would take that phone call. Okay, the problem
Absolutely. For
right?
one, it's a little flattering too.
Well, sure. I mean, the person has taken a moment. That's the other thing that, you know, we got almost the very next day, Coca, we got another one that was actually spam directly through the Contact Us page on our website, which is even worse because I had just written a blog post about spam and how we don't like it. So, you know, that person obviously wasn't going to get our attention. But, you know, in both cases, the one I just described and this one about the video, in both cases, these people are offering a solution that we might find valuable for our business. And because of the approach, we make a conscious decision to say we're not going to do business with these people. And the reason we wanted to highlight that is because we're not the only ones. And if you think about all of your buyers out there, all of the potential prospects, they're tired of the emails that come at them with nothing in it for them, and it's merely an attempt for the salesperson to try and get something for themselves. And then I had to share this one. This one is kind of funny. This one came through LinkedIn InMail. And I want to draw your attention to a couple of things. This email is reproduced exactly as I got it, okay? The only thing is I wanted to highlight the very first sentence because I couldn't believe this person said it. She says, "This is not spam. I typed this message to you manually." Okay. And then, you know, there's some other problems in here, and there's misspelled words, but the whole thing, it's inarticulate, it's kind of random, and it came to me through LinkedIn InMail. So I'm not going to respond, I'm going to delete it. But again, if you go back to this example, if you're going to send those kinds of messages, then at least take a couple of minutes, it doesn't take long, to use technology to gather some relevant information, as Coca said, to craft a better message. All right, so there's a better way to this approach to social selling, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kent.
Thank you, Barbara. So, you know, a social selling solution, you know, consists of several components. One, I want to talk about the common 5 steps that are really important when implementing a social strategy, not only for increasing sales, closing more deals, but also increasing levels of customer loyalty. One is, you know, have a plan. It's essential that we have the plan, we know where we're going, and we have the ability to, you know, measure what our success rates are. So we know that you know, are we getting the results that we're looking for from that plan? The next step is make sure we're really defining the audience. You know, understand, you know, who are those people that we want to connect to. And, you know, the more granular that we can get, the better in the social world, because that's one of the advantages that we have. Picking the right tools is really important, because what that's about, picking the right social media tools, is, you know, gaining access and certainly beginning from the point of visibility with those executives who we want to get the attention of, and really important. So we talked about having a plan, defining your audience, and picking the tools are the first 3 steps for implementing, you know, a strategy within your organization. The 4th item would be to implement with consistency. So some of the things that you would want to be thinking about is, you know, as you implement consistently, it's going to keep you front of mind. I actually yesterday was going through Twitter, desperately looking for a tweet that I saw somebody post about 3 weeks ago. And I was hoping that I would come across this person. I couldn't remember their name, but I was pretty sure if I saw their picture and their name, I would remember. As it turns out, this person had not tweeted recently. I verified that, but the email was the tweet was so important to me, I finally found out who it was through other means. That certainly is not demonstrating consistency. So when we're out there and we're really participating, and if we're going to be tweeting, let's make sure we're doing it with some level of consistency, that we're top of mind, people are beginning to learn our personality, beginning to learn the kind of expertise that we are capable of delivering, and potentially the things that we're involved in, like today with Social Selling University. Those would be some great examples. The next item would be, implement actionable tactics. So for instance, the first thing I actually do in the morning, aside from posting some tweets or putting some items on our Facebook company page or LinkedIn company page, is I literally do next go look at my incoming email from Inside View. I've set up triggers. I want to understand what's going on, and are there some things happening in the prospect environments, these target accounts I'm following? Is there something happening in their environment in which I should be aware of that could create a conversation with the executive, or even perhaps indicate that there's a need for our solutions? Participating in groups would be another example, and that's where our audience is hanging out. So, that's a really great way. And Barbara actually kind of reminded me of something today. When participating in groups and really contributing, or even potentially blogs and contributing to people's blogs, it's a great source of content to repurpose for your own means in other ways. And thanks, Barbara, for that reminder, because that can be really helpful as we continue to write content. Connecting online, it does take the right message, and it absolutely has to be at the right time. Doing your research, doing your intelligence gathering using tools like Inside View, and then, working to get a personal introduction. The first thing I do with the person who's going to provide the introduction, that I hope is going to provide the introduction, is to continue to do some more research. And, my ultimate goal, like all of us, is to bring that conversation from online to offline, pick up the phone and work at securing the first meeting. Measuring and tracking. We absolutely must measure and track the results that we're getting and look at it against our plan and repeat the process over and over. And that there consists of the 5 steps for implementing a strong social selling strategy that you want to keep in mind when doing so within your own organization. Barbara?
So before I share another success story, Coco, I would just want to check in. Do we have any questions from the audience that we want to address?
Yeah, there are actually a couple questions. They go back down to LinkedIn. Greg on the attending said, how do you handle reporting your metrics in CRM from LinkedIn and Twitter? And this is, again, these are great questions because these are things that get asked of me when I'm at events or just in general. One of the things that CRM hasn't caught up to yet is what is considered a social CRM. It's a very gray area how a CRM instance is actually becoming more social. And internally, as a sales team here, our salespeople are actively going out into social networks, be it on LinkedIn or on Twitter and other aspects, even like Focus.com, be it the Q&A type forums, and getting these introductions and gaining new connections. But how are you supposed to capture that? What are the best practices you have found in your travels about bringing that information into a CRM system?
Well, I'm not sure what Kent's going to say. I'm going to say that don't have a perfect answer. If I've got my targeted list of people I'm trying to connect with and follow, right? They are already listed in Salesforce.com as a lead opportunity. I've already got some information in there. The best that I've been able to do at this point, Coke, is I manually track. Okay, we've connected on LinkedIn, or we've had this many conversations, or they heard us on the webinar. I don't have a great answer in terms of the making it automatic.
Yeah, and I don't know if it needs to be automatic. And so what I'll share is what we do internally is, when it comes to lead source, when, we have an outbound sales effort as well. And part of the outbound effort is they look for people within these social networks that are having issues or talking about things that relate to our business. And, we have a lead source that says, Twitter. We have a lead source for other social networks. And that's how we measure it internally. Like, if we somehow got an opportunity that closes, a big deal, and we can track it back down to, hey, we initially reached out to this executive on Twitter, and then it grew into this relationship that then turns into a huge opportunity. That's the best way to do it. It's still somewhat of a manual process, but you have to build the mechanisms inside your CRM, so that's not just phone call, voicemail, the typical things that are basically out of the box with a CRM system.
Well, actually, that is a really great idea. I just made a note to myself to go in and customize that lead source a little bit further, because what I've been doing to this point is, we have the lead sources broken down by referrals and different people and things like that, and I've just been making a note in the record, but of course, it should be, a choice in the lead source.
But when you have it in the record, I'm sure you know, it comes down to, wait, I know I had a conversation with this guy on the social network, and you have to go find it.
That's exactly right.
Doing a search through activities is extremely difficult, and we knew that was a problem internally, so we just turned it upside down and said, okay, we're going to start tracking these things at a higher level so we can actually build reporting around it.
Well, there you go. I mean, see, so what's the great thing about participating in these webinars is every single time I take away a new tip or something that that can be put into practice. So, Coca, I'm gonna actually go in and customize our lead sources right away, so we can do the same thing. It's so obvious, right? But sometimes you miss the most obvious.
Another question that's come up is, leveraging connections for a pitch. The comment David, who's attending, said, nothing I hate more than having an old friend call me just with a pitch. Do you think it'd be better to be honest right up front when you're leveraging connections to get into a new prospect?
So, Kent, you want to take that one? I have an opinion, but I know you may have some thoughts on it also.
Well, I do have some thoughts, if I understand the question correctly. When I'm going to make a phone call to somebody that's within my network, I don't feel that I'm giving that person a pitch. I'm interested in finding out their relationship with the executive and how they may be able to be of help to me. I'm oftentimes, I try to stay in touch with my network. It's hard. In fact, it's actually the subject of my next blog post that I've outlined, and I think it's really important that we get to know our network. We may casually connect with some people, like even following today's webinar. I'm pretty confident I'll receive some invitations. That's typical, and while I may not immediately engage beyond a thank you and a quick email, I am going back and making sure that I'm building higher levels of relationship with each of those persons. And if I find that somebody's not a right match for me, and I don't mean it just from a business point of view, but I just feel that they're just not the right match for me to be networking with, then I make sure that they're not part of my network, so I won't be looking to call on them in the future. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And Coca, was it David you said who gave us the question?
Yeah, and I want to key in on something that Kent just said that should be emphasized. It's you need to and we use this methodology internally, and we talk to all of our customers, and when we go out and speak about social selling and what our application does, and you have to forget. Most salespeople are so ingrained and trained in the idea that you have a CRM, it's your phone book, and it's got all of this contact data, and all we do is treat these people as a contact record in our CRM. We have to start thinking of our prospects, and especially our customers, as people. And if we can focus on the things that these people are dealing with on a regular basis, be it information they're sharing on a social network on a personal level, or things that are happening in their company or in their industry, it makes it much easier to have these normal conversations that aren't salesy. And no buyer, none of your prospects or your customers want to talk to you if the only reason you ever call them is to say, hey, you're up for renewal, where's our check? Or when you're calling a prospect to say, hey, where are we at in this opportunity? You have to find other reasons to have conversations. You have to build that rapport on many different levels to have that deeper relationship. Ken had just said that, and I wanted to just emphasize that you need to find better ways to keep in touch with your contacts, and you have to start treating them more like people, and that's going to turn into huge revenue events for a company.
Well, I think so too. And if I and you know, and I one thing I was picking up on David's question as well is, you know, he said old friend. Could suggest this is a person who's not been in contact for a while. And I have a particular pet peeve about this. I am very open to someone contacting me because they're looking for a little assistance getting into an organization, or maybe they need help with the job. But I do have an expectation that they're going to offer to do something to help me in return. And so what I have had happen in several instances, there were a couple of people I can think of who the only time I ever hear from them is when they're out of work and they want my help for something. Or somebody calls up and it's like, hey, I'm trying to, you know, we've got this new product and I want to get in front of XYZ customer, and I know you've been doing business with them for years. If I don't hear the, you know, Barb, I'm going to ask for a favor, and hopefully you're going to be able to help, and we're not going to end this call until I'm able to offer up something to do for you in return. So for me, David, if somebody is calling and it's all one-sided, it's all about what they can get, and they're not offering up anything in return, that doesn't make me feel real warm and fuzzy about wanting to assist them. So I don't know if we had another question, Coca, or if I should just go ahead with
Yeah, there's more if you want to keep going.
Sure.
The questions keep coming in. You know, so David also had another question that came through in regards to, you know, social selling seems compelling in many ways. They focus on, you know, the C-level executives, who in many cases might not be on a social network. So, you know, what is another approach you should have? And, you know, my take on it, and then I'll let you kind of give your insight, is that they don't need to be on social networks. I mean, the reality is that they are somewhere. They're, you know, most people, I think it's like 80% of the business world is now, you know, in some social network. It may not be the one you're focusing in, which might be a key indicator that you need to start looking at other places. But, you know, find other ways to get in contact with them. And that's really all social selling is about. It's not about getting rid of email in your phone. We just know that email and phone is not as effective as it used to be, so you have to find new ways to communicate. But it all really just comes down to having that relevant message so that when you find a way to communicate with them, you're able to get in front of them with the right message.
Very true. And you know, last year Kent shared a white paper with me that I reference often, and it came from Forbes, and it's called Rise of the Digital C-Suite. Go look it up and read it, because as Coca says, the large majority of the execs you're trying to get in front of are on social sites. The key to targeting your audience is then figuring out what might be the sites most relevant and most pertinent to them. You know, a customer of ours who does a lot of work in the area of data security, they were having difficulty reaching their ideal customer. This customer was not, they weren't answering phones, they weren't doing email. They happened to be at a local event in Atlanta, and they had a panel, and these executives were on the panel, and so the question was asked, what's the best way to reach you? We're really having trouble. You know what they said? Join our LinkedIn group. That's where we're having conversations. That's where you can demonstrate relevance. That's the easiest way for us to determine whether or not we really want to have another conversation. So, you know, you need to be thinking just beyond where you think the social site is, you know, the one that's going to be the best. You need to think about where they are, but the truth is the large majority of business professionals are on social at you know, some way, shape, or form. You know, so kind of what we've been talking about is in this world of social selling, you know, I remember getting started in sales early on. It was all about who you knew, right? But now what's more important is what do you know about the people that you know. That's what's going to open up those doors. Who do you know that can help you with that connection? How can you help them? You know, sometimes, like Ken said, when I meet somebody, you know, I'm looking for a way to help them. Can I connect them into some potential business for their own company? And this is a little counterintuitive and hard for some sales reps to think about, this notion of giving something in value first without expecting that immediate return. And so, you know, really what we're talking about is how well you get to know. So let me share this before we take some more questions. Let me share this example. This is an example of network hardware resale where they using, you know, social media, the email and the phone, right? It's not one thing, it's a combination of things. They found that they quadrupled meeting acceptance rates. Here are the two things they did. Just like we've been talking about, they crafted relevant messages for the prospect. They spent time in social media profiles, and then they crafted a custom message, not the boilerplate like I showed you. Then what they did is they went on to look for common connections so that they could generate the warm introductions. These two things, these two changes in their approach led to meeting acceptance rates going from 15 to 60%. I don't know about you, but that's the kind of result I'm looking for, and I think that's super powerful. And they only did two small but very important, impactful things in order to shift that around. They took time to get to know the people and made it relevant for them.
Barb, another great success story around Network Hardware Reseller, who's a customer of ours as well, is that they are really pioneers when it comes to social proximity, when it comes to lead flow or lead assignment. So most people on this call and in most companies, you have a sales territory. You manage the West Coast, you manage the Northeast, the Northwest, whatever it is. When you, as a salesperson, as a sales manager, you divvy up the country or whatever territory you're selling into by the number of salespeople you have. And NHR, what they've done is they've basically done away with sales territories. And what they'll do is they'll say, hey, we're getting leads, inbound leads based on marketing activities or whatever they're doing. And when that lead comes in, they'll say, who in our company has the most connections to that individual, regardless of geography? And that's how they assign their leads, because they realize that even though it's an inbound lead or it's a lead that comes in through some way, that that person's already interested in their products and services, but let's leverage the connections we have with that individual to assign that leads to a salesperson, because they knew that there was a good chance of the deal closing much faster if they leveraged all of these different connections and they had an immediate rapport with whatever that rep was that they were dealing with. And I thought that was amazing when they explained that.
It's brilliant when you stop and think about it. It makes sense. I mean, just because I'm physically located in Atlanta and a lead comes in for Atlanta, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be the right one. So why wouldn't you want to? And I think we're going to see more and more of this, Coca. Why wouldn't you want to make sure that you are giving it to the person who is the most connected? Because there is a much higher likelihood that they're going to get the meeting and they can move faster, through the sales cycle. I think that's really brilliant. So some really great success stories are starting to pop up that we've seen that are making it clear that by shifting your approach, you're able to identify those prospects and generate business, but you're doing it in a way that makes a lot of sense for the customer. And then I've got another great example, and I'm going to turn it over to Kent for some of the balance of what we wanted to talk about. So many of you might know, I know Cokie you do, but Todd and his team at PGI just do an incredible job leveraging social and what they call Blog Tuesday. And it's a unified approach. Every Tuesday, all the sales reps are geared up to share tweets and LinkedIn status updates. And by the way, they do this all through the week, but this is a concerted effort on this one particular day. And one of the things that Todd told me led to some real success is that they streamline the process, and then they get help. A lot of content is already queued up for the salespeople ahead of time, so they can just execute on those messages and share the blog posts. But also their marketing folks help them tweak it a little bit, so salespeople don't have to think that up. Here's what they got in terms of results. 25% Salesforce engagement just 1 year ago. Today, the entire sales team gets engaged using social because there are so many great stories that they have about how they've uncovered new sales opportunities that led to quick closes. And so their lift in sales performance is up 4 times as a result of taking this targeted approach. So companies are doing it, and they're doing it well, and we're going to see more and more of these amazing stories pop up. And again, when I talk to people, when Ken and I interview people and talk with them about what they're doing, when we even talk to our own customers, these are not complicated things to put into action. But once you have something, you need to follow that process very consistently and very religiously. Kent.
Yes, so sales executives' role in social selling. One of the things we certainly know in any great initiative in an organization is that we have the support at the top. And at the top is helping to set the strategy, really establish the objectives, and it was there. They want to ensure a really good implementation. They want to make sure that it's successful. I also think that it's really important that sales executives, continue to review that implementation and measure the successes, determine what needs to perhaps be changed to get even better results. A good level of accountability for the use of the new social selling process and using social media consistently is really important, because without consistent application, and certainly it does take a bit of good behavior on the part of professional salespeople in terms of the kinds of communication that they're having. But it's really important that sales executives and leaders are supporting the initiative, and they're participating in the initiative because they too, their voice should be heard and helping to support their sales organization. So, the question becomes, how do we know our sales organization is ready? And I began answering that question to some extent earlier. It's important to have the business acumen, social media savviness. Is the sales team comfortable, and are they ready? But that oftentimes means that, we have to evaluate, is the sales organization ready from a place of sales competency? Are those skills there? Are they strong? Especially in the area of not just sales process, but even opportunity management, because those both come into play in a good social selling strategy. And then ultimately the people results. So in a process to implement a successful social selling strategy, you want to think of the following. We talked about how important it is, and in fact it's essential. The most essential thing is to begin with a plan. Then you can move from the plan over to working with the sales team and the sales management on sales training, making sure that they're having the training that they need. If that is already in play and there's a good base of sales training, then it's moving right into the social selling training. And really working that, and hands-on is obviously the key to working with social media. There's no other way. But it's also important that the salespersons have the support and the coaching that they need so that they're likely to create the habits that are necessary for consistency. And then, as we always say, measure, track, adjust where needed, and then continue to repeat the process so that you have and begin to receive the results from your social selling strategy, like some of the examples Barbara gave, PGI and others. So, and then, some people ask, what does a solution look like? If I'm going to go out and I'm going to evaluate a solution, what are the things that I need to be considering in this process? What are the elements? The first one is, it does require an understanding of the technology. It requires a personalized social sales plan. That means every single individual needs to also have their sales plan. There needs to be a compelling online presence. One of the first things that comes to mind is, LinkedIn. Is it compelling? Does it have some of the things that you can do with LinkedIn to cause greater attention to it? SEO elements. Are you using the same photograph across all your professional social networks? The process to prospect and generate leads, and we talked about that somewhat earlier, 7-step process, a way to engage prospects successfully. And then, I know that many salespeople really kind of struggle, how do I take this online conversation and move it over to the phone? And we did talk about, and we had some questions come up, but, certainly making sure that your sales team, after they've done all of this intelligence gathering and research, that they feel confident that they have a good reason and some value to bring to that executive that they're making the call to, and continue to track and measure. Barbara?
Well, thanks. And the one thing that I want to reinforce before we sort of wrap up and then take any final questions is we really are of the firm belief that technology is not going to sell for you. So we can talk with you all day long about how to leverage technology to get in front of the right prospect. And then you've got to have the right sales skills to get it done well. We shared with you some examples of people who are using the technology, and their sales skills are a little lacking because they're not even crafting relevant messages. So That's the reason we always advocate and make sure that you have good sales training to support the actual training on the technology that you'll use in the social media space, so that you're really getting the leverage that you're looking for. Really the final things from us is, it's a combination of the two. You've got to have the great skills in both areas. And, and today, really, the world relies on both. You need to be savvy about how you can use social media to build that brand, but also you've got to continue to have great sales communication and sales presentation skills. Before we answer any questions, we'll just leave you. These are a few of the things that we offer up to customers who work with us. And so if your organization is looking for some assistance in putting a real strategy in place to drive the sales results you're looking for, we'd certainly love the opportunity to talk to you. And so feel free to connect with us. As always, you're going to be getting a copy of the recorded session after the session, and we also send out follow-up and little ebook goodies and so on. So with that, Coke, I know we're coming close to the top of the hour. Were there any final questions people wanted us to address?
One of the questions, is from Sean, is, what's a resourceful way to find Twitter handles of a company execs?
So a resourceful way, does that mean an easy way?
Yeah. One of the obviously you should be using technology to help you out with this, and there's ways to go about this. But Inside View as a product allows you to do just that. So you're able to say, I need a VP of marketing or a VP of technology at a company of this size, and I want all of them that have a Twitter profile. You can get that granular into it. But are there any other tools that you know of that you can? I think Inside View is the only one that I know of, but maybe you've come across others.
No, actually, yours is the only tool. That's why I laughed and said, we're looking for an easy way, because right now it's a little tough. Certainly look on, if you're on their LinkedIn profile, look to see. But the most streamlined approach that I've found thus far is really using the Inside View tool in order to be able to do that. Now, I know in the beginning when I was getting started with Twitter, I went out, I searched on the web. This was long before I knew about Inside View. I searched on the web for a list of execs on Twitter. Mostly what I found were like marketing execs. So my recommendation would be take a look at the Inside View tool for sure. And I think that's the easiest way at this point in time to find the people that you're looking for.
Another question from Richard was, what do you do if you're a small organization and you want to start getting involved in social selling? Research is very time consuming. Should a company look at employing a specialist, or basically training their existing sales team?
What do you think, Kent?
Well, that's kind of a question around understanding what social selling is and how to be able to put it together. I know that one of the fortunate things we've had is working with several small organizations, and my career overall has been working with small organizations and large organizations. And it's, I think one of the things is taking the complexities out of what oftentimes people think social selling is, and actually putting in a process that's very easy to use and deliberately consistent activity will ultimately achieve the results. So I don't mean to talk from kind of a high level, but I know we certainly do engage with smaller organizations and get them up to speed pretty quick.
So, and there's two things that you can think about, because you do raise a really great point, especially relative to the research. Research does take time. Even with great tools like Inside View and LinkedIn and others, it does take time, and time is sometimes a commodity that you can't afford, especially in a smaller business. So two things that we can certainly help with, or you can certainly explore, in your own local area. One, we'll either train your folks in a process, as Kent mentioned, a very specific process, and we have a tool that we have created that you can leverage to gather the info, so it's clear, it's concise, it's kind of all in one place. You can attach it to your CRM record, whatever it might be. Or you may want to consider that you do have somebody on staff and their sole job is to be that sales support specialist, and they're going to support with the research and all those sorts of things. And then another option is we are about to offer up a service where we will do that as a service for customers who really cannot afford or don't want to put a full-time person on staff. We will certainly outsource that service. So I didn't know if there was anything else, Coca, but we really appreciated the opportunity to be here again today, and certainly encourage everyone to take a moment to check us out and connect with us if you are so inclined. We'd love to keep the conversation going, and I'm happy to keep answering your questions.
One of the questions that did come through was, how do you drive adoption? And I know this is a very large question, but going from organizations that are not very socially active to individuals with a high clout score, very very active individuals. When you talk to companies, large companies that I know you deal with, as well as the smaller companies, how would you typically structure the initial steps? How do you drive adoption on a wider scale?
And so when adoptions, or we were talking about how do you get more people on your fan page, how do you get more people to connect you or follow you on Twitter? Is that kind of what you think they mean by adoption?
I think they mean more of, I have a sales team, one or two of them might actually be interested in this. How do we drive, is there a way, and I think this is actually answering its own question, how do you get more of them to be more active? And I think that the easy answer is you start identifying and measuring the initial successes with a very small group. And I think when salespeople, being of competitive nature, as we all are, when we start seeing that the guy sitting next to me is making more money than me because he's doing this Twitter thing, I'm going to start learning how to use Twitter.
Bingo.
Right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Because, if you think back to Todd's team, remember a year ago, 25% adoption. Today, 100%. And the reason why it's 100% is other folks in the sales team started seeing that their peers were capturing new opportunities off Twitter. They were following through. They were getting deals closing more quickly. All of a sudden, it became very obvious. So I think that you find ways to let them know and show them examples of how they can earn more money, and it will organically happen. I guarantee you. If any salesperson worth their salt, we're all competitive. If I'm seeing, Coca and Ken over on the other side of the room, and they're spending a little bit of time every day on social media, and they're getting more leads in their pipeline and closing deals more quickly, I'm going to be paying attention to what they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, with that, Barb and Ken, I always appreciate you coming on to Social Selling University. Every time you're on, it's new content, and it's always something that I learn something from, and it's always nice to hear that I'm able to share something that you can take away as well. So thank you all the attendees, and be sure to connect with all of us on social networks. You got LinkedIn, you got Twitter. We have a Social Selling University group on LinkedIn that you can go in and ask additional questions on. But, we live in a connected world, so let's just all get connected and we can all help each other out.
Well, thank you, Coca. I appreciate being here, and thanks to all of you who joined us today.
Thank you.